when we were, and I'm gonna flip through the structure type slide here, and what we had shared with you were basically three concrete structure types that would be considered for the main line, which is this 2-mile-long bridge, right? And we picked concrete because it is a durable structure type, and it's used pretty much throughout the country, and it has a great application here. So, and there are differences between the three that I think that you heard. Differences in cost, differences in how they're built, and what the traffic impacts are, and then differences in how they look, right? The visual aspects, the aesthetics, as we refer to it as. I guess I'll start with what we call the LGs, or the line girder structures. Again, these are the conventional structures that you see pretty much everywhere throughout the state and throughout the country. And we have these shown underneath the bridge, is showing approximately how many there are, right? And how closely they're spaced. And the same with the LU girders, and you can see they're not as many because they're kind of like two girders in one, right? You see two of these beams, as part of this trapezoidal shape. So they cut down on the number of visual elements when you look underneath the bridge and you see this view. You don't see as many of those types of bridges. And then lastly, you see what was referred to as a segmental bridge, bridges that are used primarily for, sometimes for longer spans, right? And simple trapezoidal shape, again, and they just consist of two of these girders. And each of these three have different costs. Each of these three are constructed differently. Sometimes they have similarities. But each of these three look differently. So it's important that, we get your input on, what you like and don't like about, all of them, right? When we were talking about the structure types, was it pretty straightforward? Was there something you wanted to know specifically about one of the three? I guess I'll just open it up the floor, Andy or Brian.
I like the way that you could span long distances, and it's something different. We don't have any of those in Lafayette area, so I think that would be very innovative.
Perfect. And that's a good point, because that's exactly what was required, to have these longer than normal spans.
I have a question. I'm sorry. Do you want to wait until you call on us for questions?
Oh, heck no, please.
I'm not quite sure how you wanted this to flow.
I do not. It's open.
Okay. So I either am misreading the attachments so far since the introductory meeting, I think last month, or I missed something, because unless someone is an engineer, I'm so sorry. I'm like the last one at my workplace and I have to go.
Oh, please.
I don't want to give input on structural, which was the best for traffic flow. That's going to have something you work out with the city. And I don't want to give input about, whatever structural engineer thing. I'm not an engineer. I'm here representing the Preservation Commission. So based on what I miss, I'm guessing the location has been selected. Right now, you're trying to get this commission's feedback on aesthetics, as far as I can tell. And we can certainly put together a packet on behalf of the Preservation Commission to, I don't know, this looks more like this architectural style, or this looks more like this element that's unique to Lafayette. We can put together a little packet like that. But I'm not quite sure what the goals of this. The past three presentations have been very much about how bridges work. And I had asked a question at the introductory meeting about affected historic properties. And I understand that for federal projects, they don't consider something historic unless it it qualifies for the National Register, but we also have a local register. So I'm assuming that y'all got all of that from our preservation officer for the city. But as the Preservation Commission chair, are we going to give him a chance to look at that information? Because as far as like texture and, you know, pier type and everything, whoever's living closest to that should probably, you know, have an opinion on that. But I'm not sure what the goals of this breakout session are, other than aesthetic elements of a bridge that has already been selected by the, I'm not quite sure, I missed something, because whenever I was first in, they were still picking location and they were still picking all of that information. So where are we with that?
I think those are good questions, and I know Steve could probably help answer your question about, you know, incorporating the local preservation. But, you know, the things that are kind of locked in are the location of the alignment of the main line. That's a given. But and also what's given is that we want to do kind of like what Brian was saying. We want to provide longer spans. So we're going to have longer spans so it's easier to see underneath the bridge, right? And then thirdly, we want to provide a bridge that's at least 22 feet tall. That's a huge, because the federal guidelines for what's referred to as AASHTO, or the Federal Highways Commission, requires a minimum height of about 16.5 feet. So in a way, the DOTD is providing, we'll call it an enhancement, by raising this bridge up a little bit, so it's not like a canopy, right?
Right.
So those things are kind of decided. What's not decided is, like you're getting to, is what does it look like? You know, these structures all serve similar functions, but if you're driving under this bridge during construction for the however many years it is, you know, you might want to have input on what kind of a bridge they built, right?
But you're talking about what kind of a bridge, as in what?
As the three types. The
Decoration.
3 types. Yeah.
Okay.
Now, as far as aesthetics go, we definitely want that input, and we hope to get all that information, so we can incorporate that into.
Lost you.
I think and this is Joe. I think what Gary was saying was we're just trying to gather feedback that we can, so that we can compile that input and make a more informed decision as to how the city of Lafayette would like the corridor to look, when in regards to the viaduct structure.
Right. So it looks like, based on your presentation on Tuesday, that you did a lot of narrowing down of which one's the best for, you had those different categories that you broke down, and then some were yellow and some were green. So it looks like you've already done a lot of research in terms of which one's the best in your opinion. I'm just not sure what, I guess I'm not sure what my role is. Maybe everyone else here understands their role.
Okay.
But I'm not sure what kind of feedback I can give that's not preservation related. Sorry, having difficulty locking the door. When you have already done a lot of research. Thanks, Marcus. And I forget the categories right now, but I think it was, one of them was aesthetics or like local elements, and then one of them was, you know, traffic, whatever. But
traffic and costs, right? Just, we kept it simple. You know, aesthetics, right. Traffic, and costs. And
right.
And so, you know, we did this, you know, as a precursor, and worked with the UTD to identify, I'll say the pros and cons, right, of all three of these.
Right.
But
and y'all have one that was all green. I think it was the
some of them are all green. Yeah, right. And if I were to go to, and I'm just going to kind of zip through the, you know, I might have zipped through. Let's see if I can find what we're looking for.
But Ian, while while Gary's looking for that, this is Steve Wallace. I mean, you're right. What's your role? What kind of input can you give? You can give your opinion on the aesthetics one way or the other, if that matters one way or the other. And if it doesn't matter, then that's fine. We're just trying to tee up opportunities for people to give us their opinion about any of those factors that Gary kind of outlined there. And then Lou, who's also part of this group, can kind of help answer some of the preservation questions you got. But go ahead, Gary, on the structures.
Oh,
I mean,
and
since
go ahead,
preservation
Lou.
is a big issue, I mean, we have the 106 process, which will be starting up pretty soon, and that is about preservation. That's when.
Right. I understand how the 106 process works. I just thought that the Preservation Commission was going to be a part of that. And I haven't really seen anything other than a brief presentation. I think it was last year.
Well, that's because the inventory that determines what's an historic property as far as FHWA and the SHPO are concerned has really only just been approved. And we are in the process of getting ready to start the 106 hearings, but I mean, we couldn't have them until we had an approved document. So you will be hearing about that probably in the next month in terms of when the schedule, the first
Okay,
meeting.
thank you.
Ashley, any particular comments about the content, about, you know, maybe the structure, you know, or I'll even go a little further. We talked about the criteria that we used. Was there something maybe that was missing? Should we have considered something else? What are your thoughts?
I'm sorry, I cut out for just a second. Were you speaking to me?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, Ashley, I was trying to find out what kind of reaction you have. Is there a clarification that we can provide you with, you know, with this, you know, it's a big bridge, right? It's a big bridge. You just don't go around building 2-mile bridges all the time. So we want to make sure we do it right.
Yeah, no, thank you for the opportunity to give feedback. I think that the most important thing will be to involve the communities that it's going to be going through. And I know that you mentioned in the introductory outline that you had, I think there was a spreadsheet and y'all had everything lined up by month. I'm not sure what month we're in here on the CSS process, but I saw that you were working on the Section 106, which is something I do understand. And I'm happy to give my feedback about all of it. But in terms of really specific stuff, I think that's up to the neighborhoods. I don't have any engineering or community impact
That's okay.
knowledge.
All the better. All the better. Okay. Let's see. We also have Andy. We had a few questions, and I don't know if it was Brian or Andy that made a comment about the longer spans, and thank you for that. You know, when you think about the structure, as you drive underneath it or drive around it, you know, there might be some things that, you know, just from a visual standpoint, oh, I wish they would have thought of that, right? Or how come I can't, you know, see into the bridge, right? And I'll use the example here, and what I'll do here is I'll go back to this. I'll go back to this, what we'll call the virtual room, and please take some time it's a pretty easy thing to do, but once you hit play and you log into this I-49 VR, you literally can just pretend like you're in front of this table, and you can see, you know, what this bridge looks like. You can use your mouse and you can click your way down to an end of a table like I just did. You can look up here and you can say, oh, well, this is what the bridge looks like if I was driving along the side, right? This is what it's going to look like. But more importantly, if I want to say, well, what kind of walls are there going to be? If I want to look and I think about the depressed section at University Surrey, I think there's going to be some tall walls because the roadway has to get down underneath the main line because of its proximity close to the airport. So we're going to see these walls basically that might look like this, right? They don't have to be this way. Maybe someone wants to have a geometric shape that is reminds them of something of Louisiana, right? Or what have you. And the same with imagery. You know, I've driven I-10 enough to know what the palmetto looks like as I look at all the noise walls, right? So, and the same here, right? We have that opportunity to take that input from you so we can incorporate that into our design. So anyway, and as I move down here, and I can do the same with when I talk about the structure types, right? I can go back and say, well, if I'm standing under this bridge, you know, what's it going to look like? Well, this is what it looks like for what they call these LG beams, right? But what does the LU girder look like? Here you see 4 of these girders versus the other option. And then likewise with the segmental, you see 2 of these lines of girders. And then you can literally stand underneath this bridge and get closer or get further, however you see fit. And, you know, and just see what you think. Hey, does this make sense?
Here, this is Joe again, just trying to spark a little bit of conversation. You know, Ann was asking, you know, she doesn't kind of know what her role is. You know, as you guys look at these pictures, you know, if you had an opinion about the color of the bridge or the pier shape or anything like that, those are some of the types of comments that we're hoping to get from you guys. You know, do you like it? Do you hate it? Do you wish it was slightly modified or what? You know, just that type of feedback is what we're hoping to get out of this conversation.
It's a good point. And it is. It could be as simple as color, right? Color is huge because it can make a statement. And that kind of input is important because they want to make sure that the structure type, you know, and its appearance, you know, I'll say blends with the community. You know, we show these structure heights and these bridges for, you know, a 22-foot height, but we also have provided what this bridge looks like if it was 30 feet tall. So you can see just by clicking on these buttons, you know, what the difference is. And, you know, and is that important to you? If it's not, then that's okay. If it is, you know, we want to hear from you because we want to know if that would be a preference on your end, because, you know, you're part of this project. We'll be driving on or underneath this bridge. We want to make sure we have your input when we do that. So,
this is Brett Mellington. Just a question. I know you said that the 22 minimum foot height is like higher than normal for interstate bridges, right? I mean,
correct.
Okay, so when we go from 22 to 30 feet, does that have a bigger impact on the neighboring communities? I'm thinking about if you bring it up 8 feet, it's going to be more visible from further away, right?
Yes.
So
that's one thing. I guess it's a pros and cons, right? It's a benefit, I think, to the people who are nearby because maybe they can easily see through it, right? It doesn't act as a barrier between the west and the east communities because it is taller. So
what effect?
Go ahead.
I was going to say, what effect does the difference in height make in the sound?
It will have, and that's a good question. It will have a difference. And unfortunately, we don't have that exact answer for you, because that is part of our ongoing design. We will be doing a noise study, and we will be comparing the 22 and 30-foot heights. And I don't know, Steve, would you want to elaborate a little bit more about that?
Not in the, wait,
Maybe
Gary,
Lou.
excuse me, Gary, the noise study is going to be done for the preferred alternative. So it's after we have decided what the preferred analysis to tell you what the
Okay.
noise. Generally speaking, if the bridge is taller, you'll hear it farther away. And if it's lower, you'll hear it closer. That's about the only thing anybody can tell you until you've actually designed it and put the barriers on. The
Okay,
actual
and
barrier
that's
along
it.
the, or
And that's a good
railing,
point.
whatever you want to call it, along the edge of the bridge also has to do.
And Brett, that's why you see noise walls like you do.
I'm not referring, I'm talking about regular.
Driving through, driving along I-10, let's say in New Orleans, you see a lot of these kind of walls. You see them else places too, but those walls are there obviously to help mitigate the sound impacts. And like Lou mentioned, there will be a study done to make sure that if walls are required, that they're done appropriately and they're done along the right locations of the project. So.
okay, thank you.
You bet. Thank you for that. Let's see here. How about let's go back to the criteria, right? And we talked about the things that we use to to evaluate the criteria. We talked about the construction costs and what I referred to as the life cycle cost, the maintenance, the painting or the coating, the changing the lights, what have you. And then we talk about traffic and aesthetics. Was there anything else that you can think of that maybe we should have considered? Do one of these three appeal more to you or more important than the other two? What kind of comments would you have, Brett or Andy?
Just mine in speaking with some of the people that I work with, the SB girders obviously are more appealing, just due to the fact that there's fewer of them. And I think that opens up the bottom underneath the bridge a lot more. So that, is a positive thing. When you talk about construction costs, I think it was mentioned in the last meeting on Tuesday that the SB girders were more expensive, or maybe I was wrong. I see construction costs.
The SB and the study that we have done so far has about, I'm going to guess about a 15 to 20% premium to the line girder cost. And so that's what we've identified so far.
Even though there are fewer girders involved, is it due to the fact you've got to go deeper to put the base in and all of that, or?
It's some of it is to the complexity of the structure type, because it is a more efficient design, and those trapezoidal shapes that you see have different types of materials within them to make them more efficient. But it comes at a cost, unfortunately.
Yeah. Okay.
And so, but most of the projects, like we've talked about, get built with LGs because most of the bridges serve primarily a functional purpose, right? And in this case, you have a viaduct in a project that maybe, depending on how you feel about it, might serve more than just functional purposes.
Right. Yeah.
So that's the kind of feedback that we're hoping to get. Hey, you know what, I do really want, you know, or hey, this really appeals to me, like you mentioned, or whatever that comment might be. So, but no, that's very good. Yeah, it's very good input. And it's true. It happens to be the benefit of that structure type.
Yeah. Yes. Okay. And so your question was what things,
what things
yeah,
made me remiss, right?
is there anything that you missed? Well, then, you know, I mean, the only thing I mentioned the sound, obviously that's one thing, but I imagine the sound's not going to vary from one structure type to the other. It would have a lot to do with the sides of each of the lanes, right?
Agreed.
It is, and another thing on sound, it just struck me that if you have deflecting barriers on both sides of the lanes to deflect the sound up, does that make a difference? I'm not a audio, you know, I'm not a specialist in any of this, but I'm just thinking of the physics of it.
No, it's I don't know. I'm you got me on that one. How about you, Lou? Any words of wisdom?
Well, that's a good question. I'm not what he told me. He says that it's just no, that's not really an issue. So, well, the structure types would all be more or less the same, but the surface of the road could change the sound. I mean, it depends what the surface.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a good point.
It's driving. And for regular vehicle, like automobiles, you know, obviously noise barriers that are installed where they need to be. I'm talking about just the regular barrier along the edge of the road that you see sections. If talking about just that's a certain height, it will reduce all of the automobile sound to more or less nothing. And only the trucks will be an issue. Of course, yeah. I know the trucks are a major vehicle mix in this highway.
Yeah,
it totally is. You know, Brett, because these are concrete bridges and they are heavier and more massive, they do absorb the sound better as opposed to a steel bridge that tends to be a little more flexible and a little bit more noisy. So we wanted to make sure we pick structure types that would, you know, help mitigate some of that sound. And Lou's right. If you drive over blacktop or asphalt surface versus the concrete surface, you're going to hear the difference.
Yeah.
You know, definitely inside your car, and it's the same with outside your car. So
remind me what MOT is.
That's referred to as maintenance of traffic, and let's go over that. I think that's a good point. If we were to go to that slide, when we were talking about back up a little bit, make sure that okay. So here we go. So when we talk about maintenance of traffic, and this is important, right? It's important that, and again, it's important that we think about it because, you know, the users, the people driving on or underneath or through are going to be impacted in some way. Now, it could be temporary impacts, like we identify when they have temporary road closures, but it could be impacts during construction where, you know, some bridges require all these shoring towers and beams and so forth. And that's kind of a pain, right? Some of these bridges, like you see the segmental, they actually can be built from above, and because of the technology that they have. And so, you know, in settings that are tight, maybe I'll say very tight project constraints, they have an advantage. Some structure types have more issues with just logistics of just transporting these things through the site. You've got this 150-foot minimum long beam trying to go through the neighborhood, right? That's going to be tough. And those are the things, and that's why we evaluated traffic. Now, granted, most of this traffic impact is going to be during construction. Now, and because once this thing's built, right, whenever that is, everything's going to be operational, and any sort of traffic impacts are going to be very small. So this is definitely an issue from the standpoint of during the construction duration, and we haven't nailed down how long that is actually going to take. But obviously it's going to take some time, right? It's going to take some time just to identify the money, let alone, to build a bridge. So, so that's what we talk about.
So the SB has the capability of being a longer span, correct?
Yes.
So you essentially will open up under this bridge a lot more with the SB.
We can do that. We can do that. We have targeted 150-foot spans because that's the minimum requirements from the record of decision, right? The ROD document. And some of the geometric requirements where the bridge goes over a roadway or goes over an intersection, right? That span needs to be a little bit bigger. And so those SB girders are very easily to accommodate that span. Conversely, the LGs, are limited to a span that, is near 160, 170 feet. And so as a result, these columns might get a little bit closer to the intersection. And yet they still function, but it's just like, oh my gosh, it's a pretty tight fit through that intersection.
Well, one of the reasons I'm asking that question is because I know I've seen some drawings that were done, I don't know, 10 years ago or 5 or 10 years ago, where there was things put underneath the bridge. In other words, like a park-like setting, or something to soften the effect from one side to the other as you're driving through, or just for aesthetic purposes. So that's why I'm asking that question.
That's a great discussion topic, because that particular issue is something that is going to be talked about in these workshops, in the future workshops. Bradley talked about it briefly in regards to introducing the urban aspects, the urban landscape, right? Those are opportunities that can be used to complement the bridge, or the bridge can, to coordinate with whatever those types of features are identified.
Yep.
So
wasn't the Evangeline?
Go ahead.
Sorry, wasn't the Evangeline Corridor Initiative dealing with all of that? Are y'all part of that?
We're very aware of that, and the Evangeline Corridor Initiative was another group of individuals that identified aesthetic opportunities and for the different communities, right? And I guess that's probably the simplistic version, but I can tell you that I have seen that. Our bridge engineer and architect Bradley, has studied that more so to understand really what kind of highlights came out of that study, what input, right? We want, and again, it was more than just bridge, right? It was everything, right? It was parks and stuff, right? Trails or what have you. But if there are some things that can be integrated into the bridge, like, hey, let's make the columns green because there are a bunch of trees around, or let's put a really cool design on the columns because, you know, we want to have a music motif or what have you, right? Whatever that comment is, we want to take advantage of that and integrate that theme or that input into our design. So, what else can we talk about here? I'm looking at my questions.
How are we doing on time?
We're doing well. I think we just have 15 more minutes left.
Wow, that's pretty good, Bree. I thought it's longer than I thought we'd go. It's great. Believe me, I'll take it. What else can I ask you guys?
And
Okay,
did you have something else you wanted to ask?
Yeah, thank you. So the only thing I would say other than the architectural elements that we'll send to you so that you can pick out whatever the medallions or the decorative parts that we were kind of talking about from the Preservation Commission is that some of the textures, there was 3 things y'all talked about. I talked about textures, piers, and there's another thing kind of in the aesthetics of it. I don't remember what it was, but some of them, they're not congruent with each other. So whatever you pick for one is going to influence what you pick for the others stylistically. I mean, I don't know how.
No, I think that's important, right? And when Bradley talked about what we'll call texture, geometrics, and imagery, you know, those are just categories. And so it's important, you know, if you know, like I mentioned about the noise walls, you know, along I-10 and the palmetto, you know, shape that you see, that's obviously an image that can be incorporated. Maybe there's something that is really striking to you know, to your group that needs to be, you know, shared. Maybe it's a geometric shape or what have you. Really, you know, it's up to you to help us identify those so we can, you know, include it into this whole evaluation. We want it all to work, right? We want the bridge to work with the walls, to work with the community, to work with the landscape and so forth. So
I recall we took a trip and we were going into Miami, and there was fabulous designs on the walls, the retaining walls, and as we drove through, and I'm trying to remember what it was. It might have been palm trees or something of that sort. You know, maybe, I don't know if anyone with the Evangeline Corridor Group Initiative had any ideas about that, but maybe there's some examples of that we could look at to show what can be done, because these were really very interesting designs and very, they were beautiful.
no, this is great. One thing I can share with you is, you know, our team, you know, will be and has coordinated with the Acadiana Planning Commission. And Monique is a person that we've met several times, and she offered that same thing. Hey, what can we do to make this look interesting? What kind of, maybe there's an opportunity for a mural that can be, you know, placed at a particular location to identify a significant feature, right? Or a place or a time. We want really, we want to hear you on that. I think that's great. The public art is an important piece to make sure that, you know, we, you know, consider all aspects of the design, not just the functional aspect, but the artistic aspect. Murals are a great opportunity to share that info and to share that history, right?
Right.
So we will be doing that, and hopefully you'll see more of that as, you know, we continue on through this workshop series.
Gary, if I can say,
else.
I've only received a few feedback forms, not that they were due to me by this meeting, but I just wanted to remind everybody, if you did want to fill out your feedback form, you can email it to my email address, bhodges@bbrcreative.com. You should have seen some emails coming from me. And we'll collect them and make sure Gary and his team get those documents. But if you have any questions in particular on any of the scoring or any of that, I'm sure Gary can answer those questions now if you want to, yes, pull those up.
Yeah, and I think that's a great, thank you for that. So, and as Bradley mentioned, is that we basically have this handout, and it's pretty simple because we want to make it easy for you to, to have an opinion about, the structure. And so you might look at the LU girder or the SG or SB, I guess, and you say, well, I strongly agree with that structure type. And so maybe that's what you circle, or maybe you're somewhere in between or neutral. You might, when you think about these pier shapes that Bradley had presented, maybe you have an opinion that round, right, looks better than square. And does this really help me? Does this create and I'll just go with the questions that are asked. Is this concept visually pleasing? Does it help create usable space? I think, Brett, I think you had a comment about the space underneath.
Mm-hmm.
And then a little bit more abstract, but, will the structure leave a positive impact to the community? I know that's a little bit more nebulous, but maybe there are some things that, that fit better than others, right? If I think about the abutment types and these surfaces, the same can be said about, image, geometrics and, natural texture, bricks, fins, rustication, what have you. And then likewise, when I think about, the structure's vertical height, what comes across, to you, and is there something that makes a difference, and how's it going to look? Well, if you want to know what that is going to look like, get yourself to that I-49 website, that i49vr.com, and you can go to the structure options that show you what it looks like if you're standing underneath a 22-foot or standing underneath a 30-foot structure. And then you can say, does that mean anything? Do I like that better? Maybe you do, maybe you don't, and that's okay. But like Bree's saying, we're hoping to get this kind of input, so we can incorporate that. And then the last one I'll share is, and I'm going to zoom up to them a little bit more, but are these barriers. And so when Bradley was talking about the concrete barriers serve a function. Barriers typically have to be a minimum of 36 inches tall to deflect the vehicles back onto the roadway and keep everyone safe. But on the back side of these barriers, the sky's the limit, right? You can paint them, you can put texture on them, you can put a motif, you can put the city name, you can do anything, right? If there's something that's appealing, that's something we want to incorporate. So,
you're talking about a lot of, oh, so sorry, Brett.
I was going to say, Bree, I sent in my forms, and I've got some more ideas that maybe I'd like to put on those. If you could throw that one away, and I'll redo them.
Absolutely. I can do that.
Yeah, because I made some comments, but after our discussion this afternoon, I just have some other comments I'd like to make.
Great. Yes, just send it to me. I think that's what this discussion is for, to make sure that we have some more conversation around it and some more clarity. So thank you.
Sure. Yeah, a little more clarity today.
And agree. I mean, there's just a lot of info. I've been looking at this thing for a really long time, Brett. So I gotta know what it is. But so sometimes I may talk a little bit fast, and I apologize for that. But I just want to make sure I'm not, missing something, right? We're not missing something.
And one other thing too, when we talk about the underside lighting, I know There's probably going to be some type of lighting where the roads go under. And, you know, I think that's important, but what, you know, how do we deal with that, but that area between the roads that go under this bridge? So you know, lighting is another aspect, I'm sure that's going to come
I
up
think
as
that's
well.
a great comment. And specifically, and you can kind of see it here, Brett, but just so everyone knows is, you know, the LCP developed northbound and southbound alignments in a way that when this mainline road viaduct, if you will, goes over the central area of the project, you know, the business district or what have you, it opens up to allow light, and it opens up to about a 10-foot gap. So you can see kind of a gap between the two structures. And that obviously helps to bring in some natural light, which is huge and important. I can tell you because I live in a city that has a 150-foot viaduct on it that's 16 foot tall. And it looks like a canopy or a parking garage, right? It's terrible. And so I think the fact that we're taking advantage of those lessons learned here, opening this up, bringing it a little bit taller, I think is going to be more appealing to maybe allow opportunity for people to be underneath it, to hang out, right? Parks, or what have you, a trail, or whatever those features may be. But as long as there's natural light in it, it makes it even more open. So,
Yep.
So that's a good point. And again, you know, lighting above and under the bridge, that's definitely something that we'll be evaluating even more, right? Because that is a safety thing. So we have to follow the requirements from there, as well as the lighting up above. So, so anyway, those are all really good comments. And lighting can be art, right? You've seen how structures are lit up at night, right? That's something that would be, you know, is that interesting to you guys? And we'll be sharing a little more of that at our next workshop when we talk a little bit more about what we'll call the signature structures and gateway elements, right? The things that are monumental, you know, to the corridor, and lighting obviously can provide that kind of wow, that looks cool.
Yeah.
So we're definitely looking forward to presenting that as well. So
Good.
Awesome.
Hey, Gary,
when
can I
you're
jump in?
talking about-
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Gary, when you're talking about these different styles and textures and everything, is that whatever y'all decide on going to apply to the whole stretch, or in different parts of the city, will that look different?
That's a good question. The answer is I don't know. Because there are obviously a lot of different neighborhoods that have different preferences, right? So I think that's a good question that should be documented, and we should address that to you, because we want to make sure that we collect that input. I guess, I mean, Steve, you know, you're on the call, right? What, or maybe you bounced off, but having been on the job for only a couple of years, I wasn't around when the Evangeline Corridor Initiative happened. I've read about it after the fact.
Well,
Has there been
Gary,
that kind of
the
discussion?
answer is it could be different. The
Lou, is
answer
what?
is that they can be different. That's part of the CSS process to decide that.
Okay,
Right.
perfect. There you go. I mean, it's a long corridor, right? It's 7 miles. It's maybe it's 5 miles. I know the bridge is 2, but so there are
2.5.
opportunities at different areas.
I can't say it will be different. I'm saying it
It can be. That's the key word. That's a
Speak
good
to both
one.
of those comments. You know, obviously, if it is different, you don't want one side of the bridge having squares and the other side having circles. You know, you would want it to be uniform in segments, right? You know, you want it to kind of make sense from a theme standpoint. For instance, you know, if you were in the core area between Simcoe and Taft, you're dealing with Freetown and Macomb Vise and Sterling Grove to an extent.
Downtown.
So, yeah, in downtown as well. So, hopefully there could be some consensus in terms of, what it looks like. But if, there is a strong desire one way or the other, I think that's just going to have to be worked out. The point here is to kind of develop the list of ideas and desires, so that we can kind of vet them against one another and come up with hopefully a consensus decision.
That's a good point. I mean, maybe there's an underlying coordinated theme with variations, right?
Right.
On color or context,
Right.
Whatever those may be, shapes, natural things or what have you. But anyway, so
We just have a few minutes, Gary. About 2 more minutes, I think, before we get kicked back to the main room. Anybody else have any questions that they want to ask before we go to the main session?
Do we have, I have a question, Bree, I'd like to pose to the group. Don't we have some representatives from Downtown Development Authority in this group?
I don't think so.
We don't?
I've worked with them through the Lafayette Economic Development Authority. I've been kind of their liaison over the years, but I'm not on the DDA board or anything.
Anita Anita was in this group, but I don't think she was able to make it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anita, yeah.
I was looking at the list of folks and I thought there was someone, but I guess I asked the question if there was anything that appealed, or that was consistent with what the vision of downtown area was that, could be possibly implemented with the bridge as it crosses through this area.
I would hesitate to say anything at this point, but I think Anita will have plenty to say when she has her turn.
Okay. Thanks.
Sure.
Those kind of comments.
I think Gary has done a great job. Gary, you did a great job.
Oh my gosh, you're too kind. Thank you. Hopefully I can meet you in person, right?
Yeah, one day we'll do that.
This is crazy.
I'm on the Transportation Policy Committee for the MPO, so
okay.
I don't know whether we'll ever cross paths on that or not, but anyway.
Definitely.
It looks like we're counting down. There's about 30 seconds and we'll get pushed back to the main room. Thank you everyone for your questions and comments. And again, this breakout will be recorded and will be on the website probably by tomorrow morning. So it can be shared with anyone that wants to see it. So thank you all again. And we should, 10 seconds, be kicked back into the main room.
Funny. This is crazy. I'm really impressed with this.